I love what you just said. Change it a little bit because I find that I suggest this all the time, and I don't hear it coming out of practice rooms experimentation that much. And by that I mean you said change things a little bit. Well, let's say whatever the item of technique you're changing, you should change a little and a lot, and get a feel for what you like and what works and what is easy to play and what isn't. I don't mean bust your chops with pressure. What I mean is if you're trying a dynamic, play really, really as softly as you can sometimes, and then for just a few seconds, really gross and loud, and get that perspective on those abilities, and those abilities grow when you do that.
Yeah.
That's very useful, actually. And I don't hear much experimentation going on with those kind of things. Play a line where the accents are on the wrong notes. You would never play the music that way. You know, like da 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 da, just to wake up that was good singing on the Haydn.
Yeah.
But that's to wake up your muscles in your brain, instead of always like a recording. You got to mix it up a little bit. That really can help difficult passages too, where you place accents in places where you won't end up doing it when you perform the music.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing comes to mind when you mentioned it, mixing up. How do we mix up, or how do we think about mixing up technique with musicality and make the music happen the way we want? I have discovered we of course we do need to practice, as you and I alluded to already, all these sort of elements. One thing I've had good success with on myself, so it's not a mystery, and with teaching, is when you are having a situation with a passage of music that it's just not going the way you want, or you repetitively make mistakes or something, endeavor to make the next pass on it as musical as possible. Think about the beauty and the shape, and allow yourself to make mistakes. Now, this is another, in the old school, that would be taboo. We don't want, the inner game and the psychology you were talking about with neuroscience and all that. If you allow yourself to make mistakes, you make fewer mistakes. If you worry about making mistakes, you make more mistakes.
Yeah.
In general, that's a very big generalization from a non-scientist. But when you think musically about something, the tendency is to get carried away with the beauty of the phrase and allow yourself to play at a high level of what your capability is.
Like I said before, I wanted to talk a little bit about your time with Chick, because we just lost him recently, and I think that he was certainly one of those transcendent musicians. He did so many amazing things, and was a champion for so many rising stars in the world of music. Brought so many talents to the table. So you were fortunate enough to play with him for a while, and what are some of the takeaways that you got from your time with him, and how did your work with him influence your perspective, not just on music but in life in general?
Yeah, thank you. He was an amazing, wonderful man. Obviously, his loss is quite a shock, especially since it came on so quickly, and except for the problems that ended his life, he was very vibrant and healthy and energetic up until the last short period, and I'm not privy to the exact details of that. But my family and I, were always taken with his energy and his happiness and his positivity and his just joy of the arts. So I met him when I was right out of university, when I toured with the Woody Herman Big Band on the road. He wrote a piece of music for a recording that was for the Woody Herman Band. So I met him. We crossed paths in his home area of Boston, and he rehearsed us on this new piece. And that's where I met him, and he first heard me. Then sometime, about a year and a half later, I was asked to join his band. Recommendation, but he also knew who I was, so that things converged, and I joined a band of his that was 4 brass, 4 strings, and the rhythm section players. And we toured 3 months out of the United States. And during that period, I had only 1 or 2 solos in the evening. It was all playing section parts. It was his music from Spanish Heart and Mad Hatter, and then New Things also that we recorded later. And then after that period, there were some tours that I really was able to make with him. It was just a thrill of a lifetime to play in a sextet with them, one trumpet, and the requisite soloing and difficult charts and the rhythm, all that, which was a very big challenge and a huge education for me. Chick as a person also was very open, so I got to know him, and he would invite me to do some projects. We both were in LA at his house. He'd call me in the middle of the night, say, "Can you come over and record this part for me?" Things like that. And that interaction led to some personal moments and just spending time on the road together where we talked about things. And he was a person who said there can't be enough artists in the world. The world needs more artists. When you improvise, just play what you like. When rehearsing was monumentally important too. When he would write these very and rhythmically very challenging, we would rehearse before a tour for a couple of weeks in sound studios in LA. And there was one interesting moment from the rehearsal side where he had the band play quarter notes, bop, bop, any note, bop, 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 for 20 minutes. Wow. And he said to the horns, just take your horn down. Don't play when you don't want to, but just stand there and then come back in. And he wanted to establish a communication and a time coordination that he wasn't feeling. Now, to me, the rehearsal before that exercise was going great because it was such a high level. But anyway, that's an example. Now, as in later years, when he would come to Seattle with a group and play here and ask me to come down and sit in one of our jazz venues that's most popular and most kind of one of the better places to go for smaller group jazz type things. Because Chick liked to do big halls and all that, but he also liked to do more intimate places. The place is called Jazz Alley here. So I would go down and sit in. But this is much later where I have kids and they're around their 20s, for instance, 3 of them, 2 boys and a girl. And we would go down and go to the thing, the concert, the presentation, and Chick would come out and sit with us, and my kids, who all were in music, but my daughter is a musician. She's a percussionist, a violinist, and a teacher, would sit and talk about music. And here are the parents, just quiet, and Chick Corea is talking about the goodness of music and interacting with life and spending all this time inspiring and communicating and joking with our kids. And just to watch the delight in their eyes. And then there was one point, for instance, at Jazz Alley where this was going on, and the stage manager came over and kind of tapped Chick on the shoulder because it was between shows, and he said, "Mr. Corea, could we please start? We're 5 minutes late." "Oh yeah, sure." And he just goes up on stage and bam, burn it out. And there were so many moments. I played at Chick's wedding, actually. He asked me to play at the wedding to Gail Moran in LA, and I wrote a piccolo piece and played it. This was a very low-key thing, very low-key, just a few friends. And it was the loss of him on earth was one of the things that hit me, one of the losses that hit me harder than I expected, not just because, there are many, many people who had a more intimate and more long-term and more frequent interaction with him than me. But one thing I noticed in the what do you call those accolades that come in, on the internet and all the comments, and I'm not thinking of the word, but when they're all saying experiences and thoughts for everyone and good wishes and all that. One of the things that was pervasive through all of those postings was how personal each person felt. It was like he was best friends and mentor and a counselor and a musician friend of all of these people. Every one of them felt the same thing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And I'm not surprised, having known him. The other thing I would just like to add, because I know I get a little long-winded, is, to me, I call him the Mozart of jazz. not to his face, but because that wasn't necessary at all. Because he would just scoff and say, whatever. But with people, when I'm describing his abilities, when I was in the room with him playing, I am a pretty accomplished musician, and I felt like a beginner, both musically and somewhat technically, in certain aspects of jazz. Not in a bad way, but just a realization like, okay, this is a level of genius that you don't experience much.
Mm-hmm.
And his compositions, I know he left a pile of unplayed compositions this high, for sure, because he was just cranking stuff out all the time. His creativity was a full-on faucet, and his personality was like that. Actually, he could overdo eating. He could overdo not partying. He had that under control because as a young man, when he played with Miles Davis, he realized that if he got into the partying direction and some of the, things that are chemical or whatever, he was not going to do well.
Yeah.
He realized that early and kept that all under control and never got involved with any of that stuff. And I think Scientology actually helped him a lot in that regard. Whatever you think about that, I know that it helped him and that he was a wonderful, wonderful person. And I'm so happy to have brushed shoulders with him in my lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because I mean, obviously, he had a level, like you're saying, a level of mastery, a level of genius that is very rare. But he also had, I never met him, but you always got that sense that you could just sit down with him and drink a cup of tea and talk about music and talk about life and just be in the presence of someone who just enjoyed the beauty of the human spirit. And it came through in his music, and it just came through in everything that he did. And it's interesting to me because one, that he did it, but it puts things in perspective that we all have that ability, and we may not have the ability to play or compose like him, but we have that ability to be that positive force in the lives of others around us, and to be that uplifting person, to be the example that people need to see that humanity is not as doomed as sometimes the news would make us believe.
I think that's a very astute and important and true observation. And when you say that kind of joy and positivity and sharing affects everyone, and he was global and he was so well known that it was a huge effect. Don't forget that in your own community, in your own family, in your own school, it's equally important. Yes, it may be fewer in numbers when you first interact with people in this fashion and present that kind of energy that helps everyone. But remember, exponentially, as these people go out and be part of the world that you've affected in this positive way, it sounds almost cliched and corny, but it really does help the world. And we need that all the time. We've always needed it. And, when weird things go on in one's lifetime, you think, oh, this is the time we really need it. Well, I'm sure that's happened to every generation. Excuse me. But yeah, he was an ambassador for that sort of feeling and situation. It was fabulous.